I'm curious your concern because obviously the labor market is so key right now to what's going on with the economy and also the way the Fed is going to make its move forward in the coming months. What's your takeaway from the only information we can get, including today's ADP report?
Yeah, I think that's the only comfort we have is the only data that we're getting. Historically, correlations between ADP numbers and where the BLS ends up with their data, haven't been historically that correlated. But in such a data vacuum, it's all we can get. And, all things considered, it was a good number today, 42,000 jobs added in October after, I think, 2 months in a row of a downturn.
Yeah, a good number today. But we have seen when we were getting the government numbers, a lot of revisions coming in, significant revisions. So how much weight should we place on this ADP number since it does omit government jobs? And do you have any concern moving forward that, look, the bottom could very well fall out?
Yeah, I mean, in September they revised negative 29,000. So, a revision could totally erase the positive news from this week's jobs report. It doesn't feel like the bottom's getting ripped out yet. One of the big things we're seeing is just new grads finding employment has been a more challenging market than it has been in years. So I think part of the underlying thing here is a slowdown in hiring, especially among junior staff.
Yeah, and that had been going on long before the shutdown. So now the shutdown is the longest on record in U.S. history. What do you believe are the immediate labor market implications, concerns?
At some point, these people who are not getting paid can suffer through it for a couple weeks in the sense that they've probably been through this rodeo before. Once it extends beyond a few weeks, it becomes extremely painful for a lot of families who rely on compensation. And this is why I believe they canceled 10% of flights for some period of time going forward. Because, people are going to do like a side gig, make
Sure.
money some other way to feed their families, right? So, employment slips at these airports
I think you bring
is
up
one kind of knock-on effect.
a really good point too, that this is now starting to get its tentacles in every nook and cranny in the U.S. So how are business and consumer confidence reports, information going to be interpreted in the context of a prolonged government shutdown? Because we have no reason to believe this is going to end anytime quickly.
Yeah, consumer confidence is a great indicator, but it's also pretty fickle. So, we went from a pretty strong number, partly driven by markets. And if you see the government shutdown go on longer with any combined short-term weakness in the market, you'll see that consumer confidence number pull back pretty quickly.
Yeah, and you talk about being driven by markets, and we have this information that AI could be horribly overvalued, and we're people making comparisons to what happened in 1990. We all suffered through that. And we've also seen an uptick in layoffs at major corporations. So what's driving this wave of layoffs, and how concerned are you about what's going on in the corporate world, that these layoffs are going to spill over into higher unemployment numbers, more concerns about market weakness?
This, in part, solves the inflation issue as long as you don't let the unemployment get out of control, right? Not saying, 1% of workers should be laid off, but, an unemployment rate closer to 5 tends to cool off inflation pretty well. The hard part is keeping the wheels on that. A lot of times when unemployment surges past 5, it goes right to 6, and that's definitely a more challenging environment for folks.
And also,
Certainly. Go
I'm,
ahead.
I'm sorry, but the holiday season has typically provided some kind of respite, if you will. And obviously that's going to be very anticipated. This season, the dynamics going on with the trend of layoffs, hiring, freezing, and the lack of consumer confidence that is out there right now. Give us a reason to feel positive, or give us the very sobering medication. What's going on?
The consumer has been a lot stronger for a lot longer than a lot of people, including myself, had originally thought. So, it's going to be interesting to see how holiday spending goes, because that's going to be a great barometer of where the consumer sits. So, I think you have to hang tight here. Some things are highly valued. They can stay highly valued for extended periods of time. So it can often be just as painful getting out too early. So, we're just taking a measured approach here and trying to trim winners.
Yeah, Michael, I also want to get back to this seasonal hiring as well, because it has always been kind of a shot in the arm, if you will. If the government shutdown drags on, let's say another week, another 10 days, what could that possibly do to the holiday hiring? And how sobering do you think this is going to be for retail markets that really depend on this time of year? I mean, it's called Black Friday because it's the time of year they kind of go from the red into the black, and if that doesn't happen, it kind of sets the stage for very unpleasant January, February, March.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Black Friday has been on its way out for a number of years, right? The days of the stampedes at Walmart are long behind us. It's all seems to be, the creep of, Cyber Monday extending further and further. Um, so, I think that if government shutdown lasts longer, that just pushes more people online. However, the real measure will be is how much the average consumer spends compared to what was spent last year. And if people are looking at their retirement and investment accounts, they will feel the wealth effect, right?
Yeah.